LCTR here, and Starship Troopers Extermination swarmed into view as one of the runaway success titles that personally I didn't see coming. If I told you it's from the same studio, Offworld Industries, as the very well-regarded Milsim squad, then you might not quite know what to think of a wholly different prospect of them turning their hand to a movie tie-in 16-player PvE game for the masses. But it seems my concerns were not well placed at all. Starship Troopers Extermination, and I'll drop the extermination part now, has released into early access on Steam, and indeed have just dropped their roadmap to give an idea where their plans are to steer future development. And as this is an initial release into early access, you should measure your expectations as to how much content there is currently in the game, although that is refreshingly mirrored with a lower asking price, though I'd expect that to raise during development process, especially considering how popular this title already is. Fans of the film of the same name will find exactly what they're looking for. You're dropped into a planet, Valaka, and tasked with dealing with the bug menace. This map is one large area with mission locations picked at set points, so you grow to recognize areas, but the exact location, for example, of resources that you need to build that base are different. This one large map approach over set mission areas feels pretty good to play on. The variation means you're never quite sure how things are going to turn out, and how well you can gather those resources and complete other missions that will affect how well you can eventually construct your base, and hence how well it will deal with these swarms of bugs as they attack. And attack they will, sometimes scuttling in small clusters, right up to a sustained torrential hordes backed by larger special elite class bugs like the Tiger, Gunner, and Fearsome Grenadier. The chaos and spectacle is great, and when things aren't going to plan, this is intensified even more. There's a nice contrast in the design of the gameplay base though. It's not just flat-out intensity. Initially you might be helping build the base, laying up bunkers, walls, turrets as best to defend the important areas of your base. This can almost be peaceful at times, though it does pay to keep your head on a swivel for opportunistic bugs appearing as you work. Then there are the missions required to fuel that base. Often mining missions requiring you to ferry canisters of resources back to your base over undefended ground, and all this activity most certainly attracts the bugs' attention. Chatting to teammates over local voice comms to keep people organised is the key to not leaving people isolated and losing all that hard work. And just quick as I'd say, if you are enjoying this video, please do tap the thumb up button, helps me on YouTube and discoverability and all stuff like that. Thank you so much. And there are player classes too. There's a jetpack sort of movement class, a heavy weapons tankier class, and a sort of utility class for building bases and general support role. And it's perhaps here that the first real feeling of early access happens, with the general balance of classes feeling a little skewed. That utility class, the operator, is arguably just the backbone of the team. They can not only easily unlock faster build tools for improved base creation, but they also have a backslot in their armor allowing them to run at full speed while carrying resources, something that no other class can do. With their access to wide range of weaponry, it's not like they lose out in the firepower department either. Each class has unlocks you access through simple XP leveling, things like grenade cooldown or additional ammo perks, alongside gear options like different weapons or grenade types. Again, these options feel limited in this early access state, but there's enough to keep you amused and working towards the next thing. The community of the game, at least in my experience, seems to be cultivating a pretty enjoyable place. It's 16 players, but there's no real friction between any of them apart from choosing how to build your base or helping with some tasks. Most people seem happy to work towards a common goal, celebrating the team's wins by shouting lines from the Starship Troopers film. So if you're not a boomer like me, then you might want to watch the 1990s film of the same name. It's an action classic for sure. The graphics are slightly uneven for a 2023 game. Nothing egregiously bad, but we've seen rocky terrains and buildings like these environments before in higher detail. The Battlefield games do that sort of thing particularly well. And although it's clearly unfair to compare a AAA project to something more indie, the overall effect does age the visuals a little. Same with the weapon models to an extent. Clearly they are referencing the design seen in the film, but there's a quite blunt and lacking in detail yet cookie-cutter feel to the visuals. On the upside, the visual effects are particularly well done. The smoke and other volumetric effect give real depth to the world. Experience of smoke surrounding and then bugs suddenly breaching towards you is something that absolutely raises the heart rate. And the explosions are a particular note as high points for the effects, and indeed the explosions from and by the artillery bugs are always worth watching out for and enjoying. So too the animations of the bugs are pleasantly creepy and animal-like. There are some glitches with physics and stock animations at times. This is early access and the kind of thing that I'd expect to get cleaned up as game development progresses. Also, the scale of what's presented is a real strength for Starship Troopers. Turning to see a vast wave of alien menace pouring towards you is one of the standout memories from playing, and I'm happy that at this stage of development, they've nailed that absolute pillar of the experience that players would be looking for. Performance is kind of in a similar spot to the overall visuals, with the experience being pretty uneven, and that's even on a fairly high-spec machine too. For general running around before the final bug horde attacks the base, you can expect triple-figure FPS rates on a decent modern PC from the last few years. The problems really rear their head when things start to get hectic. From my non-programmer perspective, I'm guessing there's a lot of overhead when all 16 players are concentrated in one small area with many NPC bugs. Just the amount of network load from keeping everything and everyone synced together just boggles my mind. From talking to friends, it seems just like a pretty universal experience, almost regardless of PC specs. You can expect something in the 40 to 60 FPS range with a modern processor when the large fights really kick off. I have to say that difference in performance hasn't affected my enjoyment of those times though. Sure, it would be nice if it was 100 plus FPS, but those hectic, almost overrun by bug moments are my favourite moments in the game. To the devs' credits, I have seen them mention performance on Twitter, so clearly they know that this is a priority for some players. In the last few days, the devs have dropped what they're calling their living roadmap, from which I'm taking the heavy inference that this is subject to change, but this is a list of what's currently hoped to deliver in the future. And it does make for some exciting reading if, like me, you're a fan of the limited content that we currently have in this initial release of Early Access. But I'll skim over some highlights. Phase 1 is this current release, and features the 2 game modes that we're playing at the moment. Phase 2 highlights some mutators, a new horde game mode, machine gun emplacements, and a new playable zone added to the map. Phase 3 has class progression 2.0, abilities upgrade, and something listed as hives, which sounds interesting, and a reward system. Phase 4 has a player hub, clans, more weapons, a boss bug, which I'm guessing is reference to the brain bug from the films perhaps, Marauder support, which from listening to other players in-game sounds like some sort of mech suit or robot, so I'm not sure if that will be player-controlled or some support NPC. And finally, a new planet in Phase 4. Phase 5 is last on the list, but this has a galactic war metagame, which again sounds interesting, player customization, and a new playable class, and even a global death counter. Unfortunately, there are no dates for these currently planned phases, and even something rough timescale of late 2024 or something like that would have been appreciated. Another sort of thing is basically the devs creating a rod for their own backs, which then they're held to when they guess prospective dates. But with no real indication, it allows anyone skeptical on the outside to say, well, that could be all planned for 10 years away, and there's no real counter to that accusation. On player numbers, well, this game has sold better than I would have imagined. That's an all-time peak of over 16,000 players from 2 weeks ago, and it kind of looks like it's settling into that sort of 5,000 to 6,000 daily at the moment. With the amount of content in the game, I'd expect those fairly large swings in active population. From my opinion, this isn't currently a game that you can play for hours upon hours every day. Indeed, my play sessions tend to be a couple of matches long before wanting to take a break. So I can understand that players are buying, enjoying what's here, and then leaving until the next content drop arrives. And on the Steam reviews front, there's currently 14,000 reviews for the game, with an overall rating of very positive. So, Starship Troopers Extermination, is it worth playing? If you're a fan of FPS PvE titles, then Starship Troopers has a lot to enjoy. If you're also a fan of the classic action film, then you're almost guaranteed a good time with this early access title. It's perhaps the game that I've been hoping they'd make and wanting to play since I saw that film all the way back in the 90s. At £20.99 in the UK, $24.99 in the US, and €24.50 for my EU friends, I think the current price to amount of content is really quite fair. This feeling is perhaps even more magnified when you see AAA titles demanding £70 and upwards for their new releases. I would expect the price of Starship Troopers Extermination to increase during its development, but for the enjoyable gameplay currently on offer, the price seems to be in a pretty decent spot. To be imaginarily defeatist for a second, if the game progressed no further than its current iteration, as long as I could continue to play, then I'd be happy to pay the £20-something to run around with my friends and do my part to quell the bug menace. That the game seems to have found a decent player base and published a roadmap detailing current plans for future improvements and additions means that I'm even more happy with my purchase. I'll be keeping a close eye on how this title progresses through early access. With Squad, a very different game, Offworld Industries created one of the highest regarded modern milsim experiences during its own early access journey. So to see the same studio step out in another very different project in such a confident and accomplished manner gives hope and excitement that Starship Troopers Extermination will itself become one of the best FPS PvE titles around. What do you think of Starship Troopers? Are you a fan of the old films? Does this look like the kind of thing that you and your buddies might want to try? Let me know all your powerful thoughts and feelings by leaving a comment below right now. Like always, I'll be reading every single one of them. If you did enjoy this video, please do tap the thumb up button. Helps me out massively. And if you hit the subscribe as well, very much appreciated too. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your continued support, and thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you next time. Take care.
Dealer